Welcome everybody to the last session of the conference on this one's on grant writing, and I have two great speakers here who are very good at it, so I recommend you pay attention, take some notes. We're gonna start. I'll just jump right in and let Autumn take it away.
Hi folks. Ooh, I'm loud. Okay. So I was up on the plenary today, and there's a few comments I made there that I may be repeating myself, so just bear with me. Autumn Labbe-Renault, Executive Director at Davis Media Access in Davis, California. Brian and I decided to split this up. My presentation is geared more at, if you haven't done a lot of grant writing, some things to consider as you're getting started, and nuts and bolts, and Brian's is more into very specific projects. I'm going to talk about a few of our specific projects too. I will say that in between journalism and community media, I worked as a grant writer for Planned Parenthood in Sacramento, and so I earned some chops there and worked mostly on federal and state grants, which is not what we tend to do in community media. All right. Again, you heard about some of this today, but we are in Davis, California. We're a university town. We're in a large agrarian county. We run a P, an E, an LPFM, and we changed our name and rebranded in 2007. About a $500,000 budget, 3 full-time staff. That is morphing. I've recently had a couple of very long-time staff move on for various reasons, 6 part-time staff, and currently working to launch our Civic Information Hub. Okay, so one of the things I do in my job is I have the pleasure of mentoring a lot of new executive directors. It's something I've chosen to do. It's not a condition of my job, but through networking. And questions that they always have are, I have no idea how to get started. My organization doesn't do a good job writing grants. What are some things I should be thinking about? So I'm going to talk about some of these things. Optics matter, right? I mean, we work in a visual medium, and so that should be obvious, but when it comes to grant writing, it's often not. I know a lot of you, like me, you just don't have time to always make sure the websites get updated and the social is current. But when you're in an active phase of applying for grants, that kind of stuff actually matters because people will go and look at it. The same thing is really true for your profile on Candid or other giving platforms. For us, so Candid was formerly called GuideStar, if that rings more of a bell for you. It's an online charity navigator site where you set up an account and you upload your financials, and there are different levels. You can get certified bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and depending on the amount of information you're willing to put in there. It is the first place to go. For example, if I'm asked to serve on a board, I go there and I look at their 990. I want to know how they handle their public-facing information, especially their financials. And so you have to assume that if people are doing that, then funders are also going there to look at your profile. Full transparency, we didn't even have one until about 8 years ago. And then I was applying for a grant and I went, oh, crud, I need to do this. So. Along the same lines, have you developed boilerplate language? Does anyone not know what boilerplate language is? Okay, great. I love answering questions when people haven't heard a term before. So if you start writing a lot of different grants, you're going to be talking about and describing what you do over and over again. And so you're really, I have a Google Drive where I just collect boilerplate language, I collect talking points, and then I can adapt that to different grants. These are things you're going to want to have ready to go before you actually start applying for grants. Make sure your online stuff, make sure you have boilerplate language, and also make sure that you're doing a good job demonstrating your organization's impact. That's both analytical and anecdotal, and here's what I mean by that. So we run a radio station, and we can easily get analytics for radio in ways that we can't get it for cable television, right? You all know what I'm talking about. So we lean into those podcasts and those Google Analytic, the data that we can get. But anecdotal is so important. I know some of you do a good job with this, and for those of you I don't know, testimonials on your websites, testimonials that air, testimonials on your social. The biggest way you can demonstrate impact, and a funder can go to your Instagram or whatever and scroll through and see that, oh, look at all these people talking about the value of this organization. It's a really powerful thing to have other people tell your story for you, and it really matters to funders. They want to hear that sort of unfiltered response. Okay, everyone starts somewhere. If you haven't started writing grants, if you don't know a lot about it, that's okay. We actually, in the days when our franchise funding was much more robust, we didn't do a lot of grant writing. We started with a lot of paid production services, and I'm going to talk in a minute about how those actually can lead to grants. But we've gotten six grants in the past 5 years, and several of those grants have set the stage for the Civic Information Hub we're now developing, because they have us working in other parts of the county, and that's been critical. Truthfully, most of them came about through conversations with our existing partners. If you heard me speak this morning, one of the things I said is this work is all relational, and get out in the community and go to as many events and meet as many people and tell them what you do and tell them why you do it, and have other people in your organization do that. I always invite board members to some of the bigger events I'm attending, to anything that involves funding. I'll also sometimes invite a volunteer producer to come along. Again, they're telling their story, I'm not telling their story, right? But a lot of these grants came about through conversations with existing partners. Hey, how are you doing? What are you working on? Well, we're thinking about doing this thing. Oh, interesting. Have you thought about how a media component might enhance that grant and make you more attractive to the funder? Let's talk about that. So that kind of thinking. And most also came about by thinking outside the box, and especially in how we describe what we do. I also said this morning, I'm not talking about cameras, right? I'm not talking about covering things. Yes, we do that. But I'm talking about the relationships that are built and the impact on people's lives. So it's not just about the technology. It's not just about the suite of services. It's connecting that to how it makes people feel, how it changes their lives. I know we had a conversation about the word empowerment earlier, but how it empowers them to do different things. Okay, I'm going to talk briefly about a few of the grants that we've worked on over the last couple of years. Is our center a digital storytelling facility? No, we're not. Do we help people tell their stories? We do. And that was the in with the Yolo County Library, and the City of Davis has an Arts and Culture Fund. And that was the in where we made the case that let's take digital storytelling, who are people who come together around a topic and they are trained to tell their story, and let's create a media piece out of it that can be used and help build the capacity of the project. It was a fantastic project. It was in 2019, right before the pandemic. It was meant to be a pilot, and then pandemic. How many of us can utter that statement, right? It was meant to be this, and then pandemic. But the library is one of our favorite and most steady partners in terms of grants and special projects, because what they do is they provide information to people. And they're all about transparency, and they're all about community. So the library supported by feeding people at these events and providing the space and the staff support. The city Arts and Culture provided $20,000 for support for a trained facilitator, for DMA's role, and for the project. We provided the staff and the tech around all of this, and all the community engagement. We handled all the press, all the outreach, all the promotions. So as I said, is digital storytelling what we do? Nope. But it was a really cool project because it leaned into what we do in a different way. CTE grants. This is a school district term, career technical education. Typically, you find them at high schools and community colleges, and we had long worked with the CTE program at a local high school. A liaison from the community college in Woodland, which is the county seat and 12 miles from Davis, actually saw something I think that I wrote in the local newspaper when we had a local newspaper. And and reached out to me, and I had known her in another time and place, and she said, I have this idea I'd like to float. Can we meet? Okay. Their idea was that they had gotten a very large grant to revitalize their television studio. There was a moment in California and community colleges about 15 years ago where community colleges were getting TV stations, TV studios. And then the grant expired and they all went fallow, or most of them went fallow. And that was the case with this one. It had literally sat in mothballs for over a decade. And it's a beautiful facility. So they got another grant geared at revitalizing this. And she reached out to me and she said, we don't know what to do. We negotiated and we struck a deal that we would come in at a consultant level of $250 an hour, which is far in excess of what we charge for our paid production services rate. But we would come in as a consultant to take a look at what equipment was there, right? This is playing into our strengths. Take a look at what equipment was there, see what was still viable, see what needed to be replaced, see what needed to be updated. And then we had the relationships with the vendors, so we were able to make that happen. So we helped them retrofit and reopen the studio. We helped them build a podcast studio. And now we are going into year 6 of a $50,000 a year contract where we staff that studio 2 days a week. Is this public access? It is and it isn't. It's not public because it's part of a community college and it's mostly students and instructors accessing it. And the kinds of things they're using it for are distance learning. That was their main impetus for getting this going. They wanted to do 2 classes by distance learning. But they also have student interns, much like we do, that our staff helps manage. And they also have gotten into interviewing some, because their liaison is wonderful. She's brought in business leaders from the community to do interviews. Tell us what you do. We'll tell you what we do here at the community college, and so on. So other funders have really liked, and in a minute I'll talk about how this grant project has informed other grant projects. This particular community college has 68% Latinx students, most of whom speak Spanish or are bilingual at home. And just to put it in this framework, that partnership with them helps us make a case to funders for how we are serving that group of people, that population. And that's been a powerful and fruitful thing. Boy, those ARP funds, that was a moment, right? So we are classified as an arts and culture organization, right? And at the time of the pandemic, I was chairing a countywide group run under the auspices of the city of Davis, but it was called Arts Alliance Davis, and it included arts and culture practitioners and culture bearers from around the county. And groups were going to the county and saying, we'd like to get some of the American Rescue Plan funds, and everyone was being turned down. What was being funded was social services and arts and culture, and what we did not being funded. I led a group of people, and we were successful in getting $600,000 grant from the city of Davis specifically for arts and culture. And the way we structured our ask was, it was self-serving, but it also served many other organizations, is that for arts and culture organizations that had a brick and mortar facility, there was a certain level of funding. It was $45,000. For those that didn't have brick and mortar but had paid staff, there was another level, and for those who were all volunteer, there was another level. So we were successful in doing that, and the most brilliant stroke that we did in that is we asked them to take $50,000 of that $600,000 and give it to the Yellow Community Foundation, which is a small community foundation. for evaluating the proposals and administering the grants and the final reports and all of that. And so they did that, and it helped the Yolo Community Foundation go from 1 half-time staff to 1.5 F-time-E. So it built capacity for them, and that has been the gift that keeps on giving. I'm practically besties with the executive director of the foundation. We've gotten several other grants. We network together, and she keeps coming back to me and saying, I have an idea, let me bounce it off you. So think about, as you are applying for grants, just as we're asking nonprofit partners, can you include us in your grant? Think about what you can do for others in your network that you work with that would actually increase their capacity. Again, grant writing, this work is very relational. Let's see, where am I? Okay, and here's where the rubber meets the road on that relationship with the Yolo Community Foundation. They had a very interesting opportunity come up. They called it the Yolo Voter Education Grant. This was not a voter registration grant. It was not get out the vote. It was a really, really short space grant. We had 3.5 weeks between starting the grant and finishing the grant, and it was crazy. The purpose of the grant was to assess how, again, Yolo County, 4 population centers, lots of rural areas, lots of agriculture, and the cities are all incredibly different from each other. They wanted to assess how voters in low turnout voting districts were, how aware they were of the ways and days to vote, is the way that they put it. So there were mobile vote centers, there were drop-offs at local grocery stores, there were, in the all mail ballot, there were, each city had several voting centers. And so it was to do outreach to these targeted communities. And so we proposed, hey, we can offer you working in Davis, Woodland, and West Sacramento. We can work in 3 different cities. Why? Because we have mentored a low-power FM radio station in West Sacramento, and they helped us push out this information in 5 different languages. So we created, and that was a first for us, we created programming in Hmong, Punjabi, Russian, and Spanish in addition to English. We added those, we created short animated videos and added that to our existing election programming. So we gave them a lot of leverage. We leveraged what we did for this. And because of that relationship with the community college I mentioned, we were also able to go on site with bilingual Spanish, English materials, and work with a student intern there who helped us engage with the students and hand out the postcards and talk to people. So I really considered this particular grant somewhat of a prologue to the YOLO local information project I'm developing, because it helped us strengthen and build relationships in those outlying communities. And that's going to be very important as we move into the rest of the work. So I think I've already touched on this. I'm looking at my notes here, which were done late one night. YOLO Local, is this what we set out to do? No. If you had asked me a few years ago, Autumn, would you be developing a countywide community information needs assessment? Oh, hell no. No, I would not have seen me doing that. And I would not have said that Davis Media Access was positioned to do that either, but a lot has changed since the pandemic. Really, these grants that I've described they have established a lot of goodwill for us, and that is a gift that keeps on giving. The city and county both have what they call resiliency funds. They set aside some of those ARP funds, and they have enough for 5 years to keep giving out to community organizations, and that was some of the seed money for YOLO Local. We've seen a lot of increased donations from private donors. Next month, I'll be pitching to 100 Women Who Give, and that was a direct result of someone who heard the messaging in West Sacramento, got curious, reached out, said, I'm part of this giving network. Will you come? Our name was picked out of the hat, and I get to pitch for $10,000 next month. So you never know. Again, it's all relational, and you never know where it's going to lead. And the last thing I'll say is, we are arts and culture organizations, and for DMA having a radio station, we spend a lot of time operating in the live local music sphere. Yesterday we were asked in a workshop to describe something that's bringing us joy, and I said, live music, good beer, good friends. Well, that's because it's actually a huge part of my job. It's a huge benefit of my job. These are great events to table at. They are great events to engage your community with, and again, those relationships, in our case, they have a tendency to end up resulting in cool projects. Lastly, if you're not regularly networking with your other nonprofits, again, ask how can we provide technical or media support for the work that you're doing? What would strengthen your project? And then we have some bigger nonprofits who regularly apply for California Arts or California Humanities grant if you're here in California. Those are grants that I frankly, the effort required and the $25,000 they typically don't give up, it doesn't pan out for me, but it pans out for some of these organizations, and if we're written in for $5,000 of that to support, it makes a lot of sense. So I've already talked about this being relational. I've talked about how we describe ourselves. I don't talk about PEG. I lean into the trusted partner, the innovative thinker, the relationship building thing. I don't use the phrase PEG. I don't talk about public access. We talk about strategic partnerships and, talk about it in all kinds of different ways. And that's it. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Autumn.
You're welcome.
I know we've probably got a lot of questions brewing. I do, and I get to ask mine first, which is really cool. But I'm going to go to Brian first, in case he answers a bunch of them.
Probably. Never know. Let me just switch this around. Thank you for sharing that.
All right, how's everybody doing? Good afternoon. Let's get into it. Just give you a little snapshot about CMAC, if you haven't heard all this stuff already, having been here the last 2 days. But yeah, we're public education, government access. We're an independent 501c3. Founded in 2006, but that media center that you toured on Wednesday, we didn't launch that until 2012. We were pretty much an all-volunteer organization between 6 and 12, trying to start from the grassroots up. We receive PEG funds from the cities of Fresno and Clovis, but our cities are okay with us using those funds to serve regionally. So we sort of serve everyone in the Fresno metro area. Our annual budget's around $1.8 million. We serve a city population of about 670,000. The metro population's closer to 1.2 million. We've got 14 full-time staff and 2 part-time staff, and that's sort of how they break down. We have different teams, an access education team, production facilities team, and an outreach and development team. And I give you this information just so you can get an idea of like the grants that I'll be talking about and the scope of our work here, because your city is going to be different. Every city is going to be different in terms of your population, who you're serving, and the types of programs that you might create, the types of programs you're looking to fund, who those funders are. So I think it's important to consider that. It's not always going to be a one-size-fits-all approach for everyone. But yeah, we're going to look at 5 of our education programs / services. Similar to Autumn, 5 years ago, we weren't getting anything in grants, and our services were pretty like traditional public access type things. You know, folks came in on a first come, first served basis, checked out equipment, made something. We had some workshops. That was about it. If people came in, great. If they didn't, also great. So we shifted that quite a bit. And even though we still have that's still part of the services that we provide. You still can come in and use the facility. We kind of call that the playground model, where you just come in, get on the seesaw, and do whatever you want, play around. But we're also shifting into more intentional programs where we're really making sure that we're using our resources to serve people who need our services the most in our community. And similar to what Autumn said, we don't talk about ourselves as public access. We don't say we're a TV station. Our channels to these funders that I'm going to be talking about, they don't really care that we have channels. It's not what's important to them. What's important is the impact that we're having on the individuals who are going through these programs. We've been hearing it, and it's not news to anybody, but our cable revenue won't be around for forever, and we need to be thinking about grants and other sources of revenue to sustain what we're doing. And when we think about going after grants, we try not to have to reinvent our organization to fit what a particular grant might be calling for. We're not trying to shift our mission to match a grant. It's got to start with, what is your organization good at? What resources do you have? What skills do you have? And how can you be funding the things that you're already doing, that you're having success with, not the other way around. And almost none of these programs we just started from scratch, in a silo, in a bubble. They evolved through community partnerships and communication and talking about community needs. So one of those programs is called The Big Tell. And this is essentially an adult documentary filmmaking program. We provide stipends, mentorship, and access to equipment to 10 individuals to create short documentaries about local people, places, or activities. They come up with the ideas. In fact, they pitch us on their sort of story concept, and we choose 10 winners and fund them and their film concept. And this program actually wasn't started by us. It was started by the Central Valley Community Foundation in 2017. But we've been involved since the beginning. They came to us because as a community foundation, they could not give grants to local filmmakers. They could only give money to other nonprofits. So we stepped in as the fiscal sponsor for the filmmakers. So they gave us the money, we gave the money to the filmmakers. But that changed when the person on their staff left, who was sort of the champion and running the program. She left, and they wanted to keep doing the program, and they said, hey, can you guys run the program for us now? We'll just give you the full amount of money you need to run the program, and you make it happen. And so that's sort of how it evolved and became our program. That's some of the nuts and bolts of how the program runs, in case you're interested in replicating something like that. And I'm happy to share even more intense documentation of how we do it and what the curriculum is. I really wish there was a repository. We need to work on this as a field of having a file repository where you can just share best practices. Here's curriculum that I wrote for a class. Here's this. Here's my marketing language. So we can just share all that information. Sorry, that's a quick aside. If anybody wants to figure that out with me, see me after the show. We need to solve that. Because there's no need to reinvent all of this stuff and work in silos. If I've done it here and I've been successful, I just want to share it with you. So we need to figure out how to do that together as a field. Anyway.
Ask a question.
Sure.
Do you tweak that off in terms of how much you stip and pay? Whatever, do you pay at milestones? Or, over the years, have some of the T's and C's changed? Or
The amounts of the stipends that we pay?
or just how payments are given, or, qualifications to even make a submission? Has everything been pretty consistent all the way through? Or have you found
Yeah, everything's been pretty consistent since the program started in 2017. The 1 year where things sort of shifted is we wrote a big grant just sort of on a whim. The California Arts Council had a project called the California Creative Corps that ended up just being a 1 year thing. But we were me and and Nat, who's my development manager, we work together on grants. We're just like, let's go after this. What's one of the things we're doing that would fit? It's the big tell. Let's do it. And we really didn't think we were going to get the grant, and we found out we got it. It was $270,000 on top of the $100,000 we normally have for this program. So we sort of had to reinvent things for that 1 year because we had an influx of money. So we ended up like doubling the amount of participants, and it turned into a year-long program. So that was sort of an aberration, but this year the program's back with the original $100,000, and so we're kind of back to our typical format.
Quickly, too, has your distribution channel grown as far as who these videos go out to over the years?
Who they go out to? Not necessarily.
Facebook?
Yeah, we distribute them on our channels. We distribute them on Facebook. We have a big screening event at the end of it in a local theater, to bring out the community. We actually also partner with a broadcast station, and that's something that the Community Foundation, when they ran the program, had established, and so we just sort of continued doing that. Because with our broadcast partners, we can reach a lot more folks on TV. Our cable channels have only so much reach. So that was something they established, but we continued on. So, for example, last year we partnered with Valley PBS, and they ran all the documentaries on their channel also. So that helped increase the reach.
Creative Commons is where, as long as you get attribution, you let others.
Oh yeah, they're all on our website and available. Yeah. And while it started out as being funded by the Community Foundation, we brought in other contributors, such as the James B. McClatchy Foundation, and as I mentioned, the California Arts Council. So yeah, sort of as these programs grow, like this one will be in its 9th year this year, the Community Foundation sort of pulled back some of their funding and said, here, we'll help you create a relationship with the McClatchy Foundation or with these other folks to continue to find sustainable funding for it. But as you've heard some of my other colleagues talk about today, sometimes these grant-funded programs, there's some uncertainty. Something that might be in a priority for a foundation might suddenly not be a priority next year. So we've had a little bit of that, but we've been able to find sources of revenue to keep this going now. So I just sort of break down what are some of the things I was thinking about in terms of this program. I talked all about finding the right funders, how we found the funders, how this really started with the Community Foundation and their desire to create documentary films. Our Community Foundation's run by our former mayor, Ashley Swearingen, so we sort of had a relationship there already. And it was perfect because we knew each other. And so when they were looking for a partner, they just came to us. And I just want to really underscore, and you heard this morning, Autumn and our colleagues talking about the importance of creating partnerships and just being out in the community and attending events. That can really pay dividends later on, just when people know who you are. I remember your face, or I met you at this meeting. There might not even be like a potential partnership in the beginning. It's just creating the relationship and having people know who you are and a general idea of what you do. And then you don't know if that could grow into something later. And that's very much how this happened for us. Bank of America. So 1 year, Bank of America was a sponsor, and the Community Foundation helped us make that connection. Yeah.
I just want to comment, we've both mentioned community foundations multiple times. If you are not working with yours, get a meeting on the books, start developing that relationship.
Yep. And I should say, we never use like grants databases or anything like that. Google's great. Just do some research, or ChatGPT, sure. Just do some research about what foundations serve your area. Look at other similar kinds of organizations, whether arts organizations or youth serving organizations. See who's funding those people, and then just make some calls, go to some meetings, meet some people, and start building those relationships. Another one of our grant-funded programs is Youth Voices. So like the Big Tell, this is the youth version of our documentary filmmaking program. Very similar in terms of format. We provide stipends and mentorship. We're a little bit more hands-on with the youth than we are with the adults. This we started in 2019. Again, similar concept. They pitch a story. We choose 12 of them. They get a stipend at the end of it. And that's really important. Something that we've built into all of the grants that we've written is stipends for the participants. And that's not often something you see, but I think it's super important in terms of equity. You know, when we offer a stipend, you're going to get a pool of applicants who would not have applied before if it means that there wasn't some sort of compensation. You know, this is a summer youth program. A lot of kids in our community would be getting summer jobs to help support their families. This is a way where they can enroll in an educational program because they're getting a stipend. And if they weren't, they wouldn't even think about applying for it. So I think that's really important, at least it's been for us, is building that in to the grants. And again, it's something else that you can really make a case for in your grant narrative that's going to sound really good to funders. You can sell that story, that reason of why that's important. And I think, at least for us, that's really resonated with the grantors that we've worked with. How Youth Voices is funded. It's funded primarily by the California Endowment right now. They're a statewide organization that's mainly focused on health initiatives. And they came to us. We did not apply. You know, there's different ways of getting grants. It's not just a competitive application process. Sometimes, again, it's just relational. It's knowing the right people. TCE doesn't have like an application you can submit. In fact, they have offices across the state of California, including one in Fresno. One of their staffers on their communications team just became a member of CMAC, enrolled in one of our workshops, and then said, hey, can I set up a meeting with you? And I'm like, sure. So we talk, and she's like, we've never given CMAC money before, and you're really great. You're doing great things. And I'm like, yeah. Do you want us to give you money? Yes, I would love that. So that one was a little bit of luck. It's a little bit right place, right time. But they liked what we were doing and wanted to fund us. And they fund other nonprofits in our area, but we just didn't have that relationship yet. And they wanted to create a program to serve youth in particular. Really around the idea of how like learning storytelling can affect mental health, because again they come at it from the health angle. So that's how they were approaching it, and we've ended up creating partnerships with California Humanities, which Autumn mentioned. That's another statewide grant making organization, and the California Arts Council has also supported this. Over the years, this will now be the 7th year, I think. I didn't update this slide. The 7th year of this program. And we actually went to the Community Foundation and said, they said, how's Youth Voices going? I'm like, great. We've gotten some of these other grants from these other organizations to support it. And they're like, why? I'm like, well, rising costs and they're like, well, we'll just give you more money to fund the program fully so you don't have to go out and get other grants. So it was just having that conversation and being upfront about our needs, like, there you go.
Brian's got the Midas touch, I think.
But maybe that didn't occur to me, and it might just not occur to just be upfront and transparent about your needs with your funders, and they want to support you if they like what you're doing. So it's just communicating.
I'm curious, how do you articulate that storytelling helps mental health?
Yeah, well, I mean, really they put those pieces together, and when they came to us, so they didn't need to be convinced of that. It was something that they already felt was important to them. So at that point, it was just us executing on the program.
Do they articulate it in a certain way? Because I'm just curious, because this is fascinating, because a lot of the grants out there are for mental health.
Yeah.
We often struggle, we're like, well, we help other nonprofits that are in the mental health field, but
Yeah.
I can comment on this.
Sure.
So in the digital storytelling grant I mentioned earlier that we did with the library, if I recall correctly, some of the language around storytelling is that it's usually not done in isolation, and that's important for mental health. It is a creative outlet. It is something that builds community. All of those are contribute to, overall mental health. And forgive me, but Brian said something that jogged my memory, and that's on a lot of foundations that are associated with hospitals or health causes. If you frame your work in the right way as a public health benefit, there are some avenues to funding there. I got an email introduction to a gentleman who is the executive director of a regional health foundation in the Sacramento area, and wrote to him about YOLO Local and said, we've identified that a lack of civic information contributes to, it's a public health issue. And that's how we're approaching it, that's how we're framing it. Could we have a conversation? I have a meeting with him in 2 weeks. They don't usually they've never funded us. They don't usually fund projects like this, but I think I might have found an in. So just, I guess, don't write off health organizations for one. Mental health, physical health, sorry.
Totally. Sure.
San Francisco Media Center, they used to be a lot like Peg, and all went away, and they got into filmmaking. And so they do a lot with the youth, and one of them that is the highest performing YouTube, and I think I've seen many of them. And you might say it was somewhat salacious. It was about date rapes, and a boy and a girl did that, and over the 5-minute video, the narrative that goes through, it kind of talks about what might happen to her, and the woman is in front of the teenager, is in front of the near adult man, and as they're talking, her clothing is gone during scenes, less nothing, no body parts are shown, but the point is it got over 700,000 views with those who did that, and it really got a lot of attention. So I'm not suggesting anything salacious, but if you take a look at all the different types of documentaries they do in mental health, you'd be surprised.
So another program that I wanted to share is this is a little bit different, and this is similar to one of the examples Autumn gave of where this is not a grant that we applied for, but it was a partnership where another organization, in this case the Fresno Housing Authority, went and got a grant and wrote us into the grant as a service provider. In this case, is a youth and senior tech camp. The camp provides free iPads and training. For the youth, we focus on filmmaking. For the seniors, we focus on just digital literacy skills. The Housing Authority started this in 2019. Initially, it was just focused on coding, and they were working with another local organization to do the teaching. And I just rang them up and said, hey, I see what you're doing. That's really awesome. Have you ever thought about incorporating like digital media into your youth camp? And they're like, yes, that's a great idea. Let's work on that. And so the camp became 2 weeks. 1 week they did coding. The next week we did filmmaking with the students. And the feedback that they were getting from the students was they loved video more than they loved coding. So they're like, let's keep doing this. And it just became a digital media camp after that. And it's actually grown quite a bit just this last year. It was just one camp over 2 weeks, and that was 6 camps, maybe more, and 2 camps just for senior citizens. And actually, Jesse, who's in the back of the room, has been a big part of those camps, taught in almost every single one of them. He did an amazing job. It's about 20 residents per camp. And all the participants are people who live in Fresno Housing Authority properties. So they select the program participants, and we just show up and do the training. We design the curriculum and do the training. The camps meet 2 to 3 days a week for 2 to 3 hours over the course of 2 weeks. And then it sort of all culminates into like a friends and family showcase of either the videos that they made or the skills that they learned. And for us, this past year, it's been about $45,000 in billable work. So not a grant that we had to go after, but a way that we're bringing in revenue. And the Housing Authority The grant that they get is actually through the CPUC, their KSIF fund, which is a California Advanced Services Fund for broadband adoption. So it's a grant that's meant for like digital inclusion activities. So that's something you all can look into. It's actually quite a bit of money. And they have 2 grant cycles every year. Oh yeah, I already talked about this, but yeah, we approached the Housing Authority, yeah. Next one is our Youth Jobs Corps program. This is actually a partnership with the city of Fresno. It's actually a statewide program called Californians for All Youth Job Corps. So you should probably look into this and see if there's something happening in your city, if they're a partner with the state on this. But the city of Fresno gets funds from the state to do this program. And initially it started as placing youth into 6-month positions within the city of Fresno, and they just worked in various departments within the city. But they recently expanded it out to other nonprofits. So we applied, and we're one of 6 nonprofits chosen on the expansion of the project. So now they placed. We applied just to have 2 youth placed with us for a period of 6 months, and it's actually now shifted to be 6 youth over 12 weeks over the course of a year. And in fact, 16 to like 30 is their definition of youth for some reason. And I think that's from the state, they define that. Although for our purposes, for the nonprofits that are participating, we're only hiring 18 years or older. And in fact, Sam, running the camera back there, is one of our Youth Job Corps participants. They're great. So yeah, Sam's with us for a period of 10 to 12 weeks. And we'll be welcoming our next round of, we call them our apprentices, pretty soon here. But that's been really great. How it works is it's a reimbursable grant through the city, and they pay the wages for the apprentices to be with us. And there is a small amount, 10%, that sort of covers our overhead. So we do have to find other sources of revenue to like support supervising the apprentices. That 10% doesn't quite cover that. And that's actually some feedback that we've given to the city that, look, you're funding positions for the youth, but the youth need to be supervised and managed by someone, and you need to give us a little bit more money to do that. But it works out really well. So far, it's been a good partnership. We're only in it about a year now, but we're hoping to see it continue as long as the money from the state keeps coming down.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I worked with Job Corps for a couple of years, and I started a program in Treasure Island. I'm not working with them now, but because I'm working with the center over here in Berkeley, Berkeley, DCC, PCM. Like you mentioned, the interns working with you. How does that work? I mean, I heard what you said. But
Yeah.
At one point, you said working with us.
Yeah, so the city places, or rather, we hire youth. So the city has an application process. If you're a young person between the ages of 16 and 30, and you're looking for employment opportunities, you apply with the city. They sort of have a vetting process, and then they give us a list of applicants who are interested in our organization specifically. And then at that point, we're the employer of record. So we go through our normal hiring processes to hire on the apprentices, and it's just a temporary, 12-week position.
Maybe I'll talk to you more about it later.
Yeah, sure, happy to. But yeah, how do we find out about this? Our city has an online portal called Planet Bids. It's something that other cities use. But if you're not sure how your city bids out jobs, because there's a variety of different things that our city bids out on different contractors. But this is how we found out about it, so that might be something to look into. And of course, we get lots of notices of like, we need to build this construction project over here, that has nothing to do with media. So you sort of have to parse through the bids that just apply to like media or communications needs. But that could be a resource for finding opportunities with your city. And another source of funding for us through our city has been this rather big tax measure that recently passed. It was a 3/8 cent sales tax to support parks and the arts. The arts are actually just a small part of it. It's like 12% of the tax measure goes to the arts. But this was something that our city has been working on, or I should say advocates for parks have been working on for many, many years. There were past efforts that failed, but it finally got passed, and it's a 30-year tax measure. So it's something that's going to be around in our community for a long time now. And the 12% that goes to the arts is divvied out to arts organizations through a competitive grant process. So it's something that we had to apply for. It's called the Expanded Access to Arts and Culture Fund. And I think you mentioned there was a similar fund in your city. So that's something you should definitely look into if there's city-funded opportunities for the arts. And I was speaking to a community media center somewhere in the Midwest. I won't reveal where they are from. But they said they have a program similar to this in their city, and they tried to apply for it, and they were told that they're not. Or actually, no, they didn't apply for it. They wanted to apply for it, but they didn't because they didn't consider themselves an arts organization. And I just got to say, we've been talking about how we view ourselves and how we label our organizations and our work. You are an arts organization. Don't let anyone tell you you aren't. And I don't know what mind shift needs to happen, but yeah, you're an arts organization. And so, look into opportunities like this. For us, it ended up being quite a boon, $158,000 for a program and $270,000 for just general operating. Fortunately, this grant was designed for two types of projects, general operating and project support. And it's so hard to find grants just for general operating support. So it's really amazing that was written into this tax measure. And by the way, I went to some very early meetings like in 2008 when they were talking about this tax measure and trying to get it going. And it's been such a long process to get it going. And some things just don't bear fruit for a really long time. But you have to stick with it, and you have to show up to these community meetings where they're talking about things like this and make sure that your interests are being heard, because there were several points when they were trying to pass this tax measure when they wanted to just take arts out of the equation. They're like, we're not going to be able to pass this. We need 60% of the vote or whatever to get it passed. And if arts are in there, people are just not going to vote for it. This is about parks. But you got to advocate for things that you believe in.
I'm still stuck on 3/8 of a cent.
Yeah, it's a weird.
How does that work?
It's a weird equation.
So what is it that you actually provide? I mean, is it education for youth, or is it like, in my city, it has to be public art right now, so I can see that they're looking for something.
Yeah.
What is it? I'm wondering what you...
Yeah, the grant guidelines are just that you're classified as an arts or culture organization with your IRS designation. Yeah.
I mean, what is it, you and CMAC?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Did I talk about that in here? Yeah, so our project that we got $158,000 for is called Fresno Art Beat. And that's actually a project where we teach residents how to document arts and cultural events in the community. And one of the ways we came up with that, it was a couple ways. One, we constantly survey every year both our members and sort of the community about the kinds of content that they want to see on CMAC, and always people say, I want more arts programming. So we knew that there was sort of a hunger for that. And a lot of the arts organizations that we work with often can't afford to hire us to cover their arts happenings. And so when this opportunity came up and we were thinking about, well, what project could we pitch that would be successful for this, we thought, well, let's just fund us being able to help these arts organizations cover their events. So that's what Fresno Art Beat became.
That sounds like a strategic partnership.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's got the added benefit of we're not just it's not just our staff that's going out and covering these arts events. We're training residents to have the skills to go out and do it, and we're just sort of mentoring and supervising them in that work. Yeah. So hopefully, when the grant is over, or maybe we're not able to find funding to sustain it, we've built those skills in with these people, and hopefully their desire alone, will further them, and they'll be able to continue to cover these events. And I should mention, we built it, or I did say it here, we build in stipends for the participants. Again, something that's super important to us. I think I covered all that already. But there's my contact information. I'm happy to talk more about this, and I think we've got some time for questions too. So
yeah, we got about 30 minutes, but I got a couple quick things.
Sure.
Is anybody in here starting where they were 6-7 years ago with no grants? I had a feeling. For those of us in that situation, do you have advice for how you attacked that mind shift identity crisis thing to come up with that boilerplate language that you were talking about?
Well, I'll let Autumn address that, but I just wanted to say before we even get to that, I had never written the grant before. Like, I've never taken a grant writing class, and I don't think you need to necessarily. You kind of just need to know what your organization is. You need to be able to talk about your organization. So if you can't do that, work on that. But really, it's just, at least I've found, you just gotta follow the guidelines of the grant. And somebody else said in another panel, but like being a judge for some of the existing grant programs, and we mentioned California Humanities, California Arts Council, they're always looking for people to be on judging panels, but that'll help you like read the grants that get submitted to sort of see how they work. That's the best education rather than taking a class. But they always put out guidelines that you need to follow for the grant, and so many times people just don't read the grant guidelines, and they're not writing to the grant guidelines. And it's like, that's a very easy way to not get the grant. So it's sometimes just simple as following instructions.
Say, Brian, one other thing that we sometimes have been looking at is look at success, like I'll sometimes see grants say, oh gosh, we should have applied for that one, we did it. But look at the ones who did win. And most importantly, if you can't see their actual application, sometimes you can, but look at what their report says, because you want to use the same language they use when you write your grant next year. Because that language stuff changes from field to field to field. Yeah. And what we call things is not what others call things.
That's good advice, yeah.
But sorry, what was your actual question?
Well,
I think Autumn's got
yeah, I got it. How do you get started? How do you make that mind shift to doing things like developing boilerplate? In my case, I repeated myself a lot until it got drilled into people's heads that this was important. And I heard a lot of things like, you're already overworked, we don't have the capacity, we can't expect you to do this, other staff don't have those skills. Those were probably all true statements, and yet, as someone who was committed to the growth of the organization, I said we have to find a way. For us, it started with forming a fund development committee, because then it had board buy-in and a regular report to the board, and it became more part of the board's awareness of this is a strategic move for us, and we need to keep devoting regular time and resources to it. Frankly, the first couple of grants we wrote, I just threw myself into them, and I worked a lot on Following the rules, oh my gosh, so important. And I have served as a judge on the awarding side, and it is truly amazing. People turn in grants that are riddled with typos and bad writing, and they don't follow the rules, and they don't answer the questions, and they forget to attach the documents. So if you do all of those things right, dot your I's and cross your T's, you will be one step ahead of many. But really, bringing it under the auspices of a board committee gave it some weight and gave it an intentionality and a chance for regular review. So I would suggest kind of starting there, and then commit to being the person in your organization or identifying someone else who can really keep pushing that agenda, because it is important.
I think there's like a misconception that like grant writing is a special kind of writing, but it's, at least I've found that it's really not. You just have to be able to articulate your message and make sense.
Yeah, you don't have to be a great writer to write grants. It helps, but
sure, it doesn't hurt. But I just say that in case anyone's like afraid, like I can't write a grant.
No, it's not like
possible.
it's not like technical writing. It doesn't have that kind of specificity to it, but you do have to be able to talk really persuasively about what your organization does, and connect those dots to what the funder is asking for. And again, it all comes down to how are you demonstrating impact. You have to make a case for the impact that you're going to demonstrate. So you're demonstrating impact twice, with the writing and the submission of the grant, and after being awarded the grant with the follow through.
Nice. Yeah, how do you determine what you're tracking for each grant, and how much does that inform the next one and things like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's still something we're figuring out as we get more grants because that's part of it is the people who are giving you money want to know what you're doing with their money. So there is that reporting process that you need to be aware of and on top of. And fortunately, I think a lot of grantors these days are realizing that they don't want that reporting process to be super arduous. So some of the grants that I talked about, like the California Endowment, it's very simple, the reporting process. And so, yes, we're tracking things like how much staff time is going towards certain grants, and obviously how we're spending the funds. But we're just doing that in QuickBooks, and it's not some like fancy process. We do have some spreadsheets for keeping track of like staff hours. But honestly, the grantors don't even ask for that level of detail. I just keep track of it for my own sanity. But yeah, every grantor is going to have different reporting requirements. So that is something to keep in mind as you're considering applying for certain grants. Sometimes state and federal grants, the reporting process can be quite extensive.
Yeah.
Right.
I mentioned earlier a Google Drive. So for us, it's a drive with sub-drives for each grant, and where we track all the information, we pull our QuickBooks info in there. And I would say one other thing is when we're working on a grant, I ask staff let's not communicate on Slack or other mechanisms like that, but let's keep it to the drive. Let's make sure that we're documenting everything in one place so we don't have to go looking for it. I don't want to be looking for an email the night before a report is due and trying to track down this thing that someone said. So just keeping things tidy and kind of consolidate it.
Mm-hmm. Are you, and I want to touch on your earlier point about testimonials. How has it been tracking the participants over time? Because, some results aren't immediate, all right?
Participants over time, you mean after they went through the grant, like how?
Yeah, are they working somewhere now?
It's highly variable. We work a lot with high school students, so they
Right.
go off and they take that experience and they go to college. It's wonderful when they come back to visit and tell us what it meant to them, and we always try to capture it. I have to say we're not that organized around that particular aspect. It's kind of a catch as catch can, but boy, when you can get those stories and document them. And then I will make a point of, if it's a funder that I know I can reach out to one-on-one, like the Community Foundation, I'll make a point of saying, hey, I just wanted to let you know that this student who received your scholarship in 2022 just graduated from Berkeley, and here's what they're doing with what they learned. And it's as simple as that. It's just tell them a story, and they'll say, wow, that's really great. That makes me feel good. Make them feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, with all of our programs, we make sure to survey the participants, both at the beginning of the program and at the end of the program, so that we can demonstrate, we had this impact. And, we'll ask questions like, if it's a documentary training, what's your comfort level in terms of storytelling? What experience do you have doing an interview? What's your comfort level with video editing or audio recording? And then being able to measure that against their comfort level at the end of the program. That's great for your grant reports to say, 90% of the participants said they had increased confidence around being able to tell a story using media. So surveying, super helpful.
Nice. Well, I think it's really great that both of you have you've gotten every grant you've went out for, right?
No.
Oh.
And that's going to happen. Like, don't get discouraged.
How do you do that?
Matt and I were just talking about this the other day, and we're like, well, we want our success rate to be high. And it's like, well, just don't get too stuck on that, because you're going to write grants that you don't get, and you shouldn't let that stop you from continuing to pursue them. One grant we've gone after a number of times is through the UC Berkeley, the California Local News Fellowship. I don't know if you've applied for that one.
I didn't, because I saw your experience.
No, that's not what I... Keep going. But
I will.
Because Access Humboldt got that grant, and and this is the fourth time we've applied now, or third time. And for the first time, they called us and had more questions about our application. And so that was...
That's progress, actually.
Progress.
Yeah.
That's progress.
Yeah,
we haven't found it, we gotten it yet, but,
Yeah. No,
and sometimes it just takes that going back to the well and, don't give up.
Yeah. We just didn't get a grant that I thought we were a shoo-in for, because this particular, it's private foundation grant that grew out of, it's corporate philanthropy, but it's private foundation. They were looking for civic impact, and I thought, okay, I'm developing the civic information hub. How much more impactful can you get? Had a site visit. The grant manager was wildly supportive. Have a private donor who has been involved with this foundation. Had all the support lined up. Didn't get it. And when I reached out to the grants manager to say, could you tell me why? And she said, we received 6 times more applications than we had gotten in the past, and the funders made a baseline, they decided to attend to baseline needs, meaning food distribution, mental health, actually, and a couple of other things. And so she encouraged me, apply again. Here's the next cycle. Don't give up. This is fundable. It just didn't get in this round. I was really disappointed, but I appreciated her feedback, which I wouldn't have gotten if I didn't actually pick up the phone and call her.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised. Sometimes they don't always offer that up, like feedback on your application, but if you ask, they're usually willing to talk to you.
Yeah.
Questions?
I actually took a 7-week grant writing course. But some of the information that they gave us, in finding a grant, was all these paid things. And I don't remember which one you spoke about, just Google. And so...
And Googling is a skill, and maybe not everybody has that skill, but yeah.
I tried that, but they came up with the same, the people, the organizations that they gave.
Yeah.
So, but maybe I just, like what you just said, maybe I just typed in the wrong language to get.
Here's a suggestion. So we talked a lot about community foundations and regional foundations. Go to their websites
Yeah.
and see what they're funding and who they're funding. You make that a part of your research. Go to other nonprofit websites in your area or talk to those leaders or board members or whatever and find out where they're getting funding. I'm going to say it again, it's all relational, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but actually some judicious website research will serve you well. Earlier on, I did subscribe to some of the paid resources, grant directories and stuff, but I found that what we do is so unique as CMCs. We don't easily fit into it. So I'll go back to what I said about out-of-the-box thinking, and I'll come back to this gentleman's comment about mental health and the public health benefit. Broaden how you think about what your organization does, and then start looking around at websites of other organizations that do that and start having conversations and putting the pieces together. It's more labor intensive, but it's going to be more targeted, and in the long run, I believe it's going to be more effective for you.
If you're in California, there's grants.ca.gov. That's
Yeah.
the statewide portal. That's free.
To your first question, when you say you start searching for grants, I can guarantee you the first four are going to be companies who want to sell how you do. I don't think you need that. There are things on that that will give you some framework if you have the skills. To the point, like you said, if you lose a grant, if you can talk to people afterwards, wonderful. Not only that, but when I was in the business world, if you respond to a request for proposal at RFP, you're probably too late. You want to help formulate what it is. So, same with grant writers. If you can explain the benefits and the value next year, then they might be more interested to not necessarily provide it for you, but at least they're going to be more sensitive to what you're benefits.
Well, and we'll be familiar to them, because we've already applied once and been through the process. You said something about business which jogged my memory. So I'm a member of an organization called Seroptimist International, which is a service club that works to lift up and better the lives of women and children. Most communities have service clubs, and we haven't gotten money directly from Rotary, but by doing presentations to them in the last 2 years, I've gotten a $3,000 donation and a $5,000 donation from individuals who really liked what we were doing. So when you're thinking about bringing in money, don't discount those local groups that are full of people who really like to do good in the community.
I past president of the Interact group.
Yeah.
High school students.
Yeah.
And the Kiwanis are just as big as us. They
Yeah.
have 3 different levels
Right.
that they do as well. So those two organizations are great.
Yeah, I was a member of S Club in high school, so I hear you. Yeah.
One of the things that I always struggle with is a lot of the grants are by invitation only. You have to know someone, and so we'll find the board of directors for that foundation, and we'll throw it in front of all the people that we have in our organization. Our board members, our staff, and be like, "Do you know anyone on there?" And then and nobody knows who they are, and we're like, well, this grant really would fit for us. So how do we make that connection? Are you doing anything? I know being out in the community, making the connections, but is there any sort of strategy you have for those sorts of grants?
Well, I've said several times being out in the community, but it's not just being out there, it's being strategic about it. It's going up and saying, oh, I'm so glad I get a chance to meet you. I noticed you're part of this foundation, and I was looking at what the foundation is doing, and I think there might be a connection point. Could I buy you a cup of coffee? I have no shame. I buy a lot of people coffee. So it's that kind of adjusting your mindset. If you're not an extrovert, you're not comfortable doing that, it's going to be a little bit harder, but there might be someone on your board who's very good about that. Or you might be lucky enough to have a development staff looking at you over there, someone who can kind of carry that ball.
County websites also have a lot of information consolidated on behalf of the cities. So be sure to look at your county website.
Other questions? Oh, I saw hands earlier. Come on. Marty.
Any questions?
They want to go
Yeah, I know.
win some.
They heard
some
about
stuff
the
at
snacks.
the raffle.
Someone
and
told
the
them about the snacks.
I got another one.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a two-parter. So do you have any experience with congressionally directed spending? And how are you thinking about federal funds right now? Are you just totally like saying, I'm not even gonna bother?
I mean, yeah, we've not gone after any federal grants other than we were part of a coalition with NATOA that went after the NTIA grant, but that's all up in the air right now due to the federal turmoil. Any federal grants you've gone after?
No, and I have a really solid relationship with our Congress members' district staff. And when the press release about, yes, the congressional funding came through, I called her up and I said, can you tell me more about this? It's really more they use it for infrastructure projects and really big donations. We're considered too small. And she said it might work if you're part of something, as Brian was saying, but that opportunity hasn't presented itself yet.
There we go.
We have one from we got it a couple years ago. It's just being implemented now. But we partnered with our state archives and our congressional members. We have this long relationship with all of our members. And they said, hey, do you need anything? And we basically got together with the archives and said, we're going to create a program where we're going to have a better pathway for all this government programming we're getting. We're going to create a better user interface for the state archive. And we're partnered in doing all this all the time because we always work together. And so I basically wrote that on the back of the napkin at the conference in Santa Barbara. Got it sent off over there, and voila. And knock on wood, from what we understand, it's fine.
Tracy.
Yeah, you had said something about like cold calls, like you think there's something that's perfect for you, but you don't know anybody, you can't find any friends of friends, kind of get you in there. So I just wanted to sort of put out one thing that I have tried, and that actually has worked better than in some ways I thought that it would on occasion. Is I call up that program officer, whoever the person is, or send them an email, which is generally better, and just sort of say that, this is who I am, this is who I work for, this is what we're doing, and that we have this program, or we're looking for some resources, and that we're not sure if it's a fit for their foundation, but we would love to take them out for coffee, and maybe they could share with us some advice or guidance to help us look for resources for this project. I think it's kind of transparent, honestly, and like if they're not stupid, they probably know what I'm saying.
Right.
But
I don't want to give somebody on the board.
But it gives them the opportunity to say, okay, sure, buy me a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And they're not committing.
See, that cup of coffee, right? I'm telling you.
It's a free cup of coffee, and they get the opportunity if they're not interested to say, no, we're not going to fund your trial here and there. It gives them out. And sometimes, which actually happened once, you sit there and do your pitch, and they say, us, we're the ones that should be funding this. And you're like, oh, really? Okay. I mean, it can happen that way. I'm just saying, sometimes asking people to share with you sort of advice or guidance or their 2 cents is less abrasive than saying, come out so I can try to talk you into funding me. So it's a possible way to do it.
We found that our channels help us have a website and all our platforms to promote the programs and so to go to the point, we always add that we are a channel because we're trusted with thousands of views on videos and so that they really like that as a platform. Like we started a grant for 3-part series of mental health anti-suicide series, and it was because of our channels and our platforms as well. So people are looking for content to support in the grant process as well. We're getting a lot of those grants that share using, because it's their skill set.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt that we have channels.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But often, you start talking about the channels and then people want to know, well, how many people are watching the channel? And they start asking these questions that we can't really answer. Although I guess Richard Turner if you heard in his panel, he talked to Comcast about that. But.
Yeah, I would say a parting thought for me is that we work in an industry there's never been a moment where the technology that we use hasn't been changing and the use patterns haven't been changing. It's very volatile in that sense. So just expect that even who you're talking to about grants this year may not be the same people you're talking to in a couple of years, especially given what's happening at the national level. And learn to be flexible and learn to just kind of roll with it.
Parting thought?
Well, just curious, is there anybody in the room who has never gone after a grant for their organization before? Just raise of hands. Never gone after a grant? How are you feeling about it now? You feel like you might
You can do
get
it.
inspired? Yeah, cool.
A lot of times
I'm glad.
with conference like this, I'm like, okay, what are the concrete? What's my next step? What's my action item for Monday morning? Because I'm going to take the weekend off. What do I do Monday morning? Got an action item for them?
Well, I don't know if all the conference materials will be up, but both of our presentations will be in there, along with our contact info. And you're welcome to send me an email or give me a call if I can help you with something. That's fine. I would start with, if you're not having this conversation with your board and staff about how you're framing your services and how they might fit grants, start there. So that would be an action item.
Nice.
Yeah.
Probably won't have the recordings up by Monday.
Oh, right. I'm sitting next to the webmaster here, so no pressure.
Well, we've recorded a lot of stuff over the last 3 days, 2 days. But yeah, it'll be up there eventually. We'll let everybody know. But I would agree. I think that's a great first step is just making sure all of the stakeholders in your organization, board and staff, understand the importance of, looking at different revenue sources and the importance of grants as one of those potential sources and how, getting a grant for a specific program, you talked about maybe you don't have the staff capacity in all the right places to do something and you just gotta push through and make it happen. That's definitely been our experience as well. But the more you can have those conversations about staff, or those conversations with staff about why we're doing this, and I think it's going to be a smoother process. But yeah, it's a struggle.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Let's give it up for Autumn and Brian. See you in the other room.